Hello fellow orchid lovers, it's Danielle here with a brief update on my orchids and also some information on how I fertilize my orchids in water culture. This is my third attempt to record this video because I have several animals and they consistently have been interrupting me. So we're gonna try again. So I do want to introduce you to two new orchids that I got, Phalaenopsis orchids. And I know I said I was no longer going to buy from big box stores, but I couldn't resist. I went in and I saw this beauty right here, and she's so gorgeous. She's such a deep burgundy. It's darker than you're seeing, and then her lip is like a hot pink color, and she has some spots. And I'm a sucker for spots. I don't know why. I mean, I do love polka dots, so that's probably why. If an orchid has spots on it, I want it. So she had obviously been at the store for some time. She has quite a bit of damage on some of her blooms. She does, though, have a bud here that still needs to open. And the tip of both of her spikes is healthy. So she doesn't seem to be suffering. She just probably wasn't handled the best. Her leaves are all in good shape. Her roots were okay. She did have a few rotten roots that I had to trim, but for the most part, they were pretty healthy. We'll see if they stay that way. I did allow the roots to go silvery before I added any water, introduced any water to her, because I wanted her roots to have a chance to callus over from any damage she may have sustained during the unpotting process, because you really can't unpot an orchid without damaging something. It's just not possible. So that's her. Now, I'm not a huge white orchid fan. I mostly like the reds, oranges, pinks, and yellows. But this orchid is stunning. And she was on the florist table off to the side, so she wasn't even out on display yet. And I kind of went behind the table and took her. So she obviously hadn't been there for long. She does have some buds. She just has one spike, but it's branched 3 times. And she does have some buds still to come. But the reason why I fell in love with this orchid is it's white, but I don't know if you can see it on the video. It's got this delicate pink undertone to it. It's got the pink there in the center, but even the leaves, they're all sparkly and they have like a pink flush to them. And then the lip is actually orange with pink and yellow. So it's just gorgeous. And then around the back of the petals, there's some pink veining. So she's just, from any direction you look at this orchid, she's gorgeous. So I bought my first white orchid, but she's not your normal white orchid. She is beautiful. So she also is in very good shape. Like I said, I think she hadn't been there very long. She has a new leaf. I've only had her a couple of days and I've noticed that it has grown a little bit, so that's a good sign. Again, she had really good roots. I don't think she was there long, so I think that she probably just arrived from the nursery, so she's in really good shape. And I also did allow her roots to go silvery before I introduced any water. I did put glass beads in the bottom of this vase because she is kind of top heavy and I don't want her to fall over. So those are my 2 new babies. So I'm excited about that. And then I wanted to share with you my keiki on my young home sweetie. She's getting much, much bigger, as you can see. And she has started to grow a root right there. You can see the little nub starting to poke out. And as soon as she does grow a root that is of sufficient size, I'm going to take her from the mother plant. Because I did notice that ever since the keiki started developing, the mother plant has slowed down. So I'm concerned that she may not bloom if I keep this keiki on her too long. So as soon as those roots start to develop, keiki's coming off. Okay, so this conversation about nutrients. I'm going to try to say it in a way that's going to be the most understandable. And you can certainly leave a comment if there's something that I say or don't say or confuse you, and I apologize if I do. I also want to very strongly state that this is what I do for my environment, for my conditions, and my growing methods. I strongly advise you to do your own research. Find a product that works for you. Don't ever just do what someone else does blindly because they're telling you to do it. Do some research. I'm just going to give you some basic facts that are known, and then you can decide which products you want to use and how you want to use them. So in the orchid world, there is the NPK. Those are the main nutrients that the orchid needs. And then there's this magic pH level of 5.8. And the reason why that's a magic number is because at 5.8, in the middle of acidic and alkaline, is where most of the nutrients that your orchid needs is most readily available. However, in my growing environment, I have tested the pH of my water because I do water culture, and as the days go by, the pH drops. So I have to keep that in mind when I decide what pH I'm going to initially offer to my orchids. So you can see here that's important because the nutrients marked in yellow are available on both sides of that magic 5.8 number. But the nutrients marked in orange, which you can see one of the main nutrients, is only available at a higher pH. It is available at 5.8 and slightly below, but it's not available much below 5.8. So you have to keep that in mind. So in my environment, what I do is I start off, because I know the pH is going to drop, I start off at a higher pH. So I aim for 6.2, 6.1, somewhere around there. If it's 6, I don't throw it out and remake it, but I try to aim for those numbers because I know within a day or two it's going to drop to 5.8. And then in another day or so, it's going to drop even lower. So I start off on the slightly higher side because I know that the acidity is going to go up as the water is absorbed by the orchid and as the water evaporates from the glass. So those are things that I do to make sure that my orchids are getting a balanced diet. It's kind of like, so that's what I do. I have several products that I use. I don't just use one product, and I'm going to go over them with you. So nitrogen, it's one of the main components that you need in order for your orchids to have green growth. There are 3 different types of nitrogen products available to the orchid community that you can use. One of them is nitrogen with urea. Another is ammoniacal nitrogen. And then the third is nitrate nitrogen. Nitrogen with urea is good if you live in a warm climate and your orchids are being exposed to higher temperatures. The orchid then is able to take those nutrients without the roots burning. But as you go to cooler temperatures, like my own temperature, I live in New York, so my orchids are never going to be exposed to the 80s and the 90s. It's just not going to happen. So the urea will burn my roots. The same thing with ammoniacal nitrogen. I don't quite have the higher temperatures required for the orchid to be able to use those nutrients without it burning their roots. However, the nitrate nitrogen is what I use because it does not need certain temperatures in order for it not to burn my roots. So that's what I use. I purchased a cal nitrate mix. I don't have the original bag. It did break in transport, so I just have it in this. So I can't give you the, the percentages and all that. But it's a nitrate base with calcium. So in the growing season, I try to give them 1 feeding a month. I'll give them just straight cal nitrate. And this, I've only been growing orchids in water culture. It'll be a year in March. But I noticed over the summer when I did give them this, there was a very distinct reaction. They plumped up, things started taking off. So they do respond to this. However, you need to be careful because For instance, if you have a child, they love French fries, you give them French fries, and that's all you give them, after a while, they're not going to want anything else. So if all you're giving your plant is a cal nitrate, it's not going to want the other nutrients it needs. It's kind of going to close off to those other nutrients. So don't overdo it with, just this. That's the reason why I also purchased, and again, I'm not saying that this product is what you need. I just bought it because of what's in it. I bought this product because it contains the micronutrients and the other main nutrients, like the phosphate and the potash, so that I can add this to this mix and it will get a balanced diet. It's not just getting French fries. I hope that makes sense. I also have an MSU fertilizer that I started using about 4 months ago, and I really, really like this fertilizer. I keep it in the Ziploc bag because I don't want it to get exposed to water. Let's see if I can get it out. Come on. So the recommended dose is 1 teaspoon per gallon, but that's way too high of a level for my growing conditions, because my orchids are sitting in water all the time, or most of the time. You have your semi-water culture where they're sitting in it for a few days and then they're dry, and then you have regular full water culture where the roots are in water all the time. So that brings out way too high of a level of feed. So what I do is I do 1/8 of a teaspoon, and that brings me to about anywhere from 75 to 90 ppm, parts per million of the nutrients. And the reason why I like it, it's an MSU fertilizer. I highly recommend MSU fertilizers. I'm not, again, recommending this one specifically, but this is the one that was available to me that I thought the ingredients were what I was looking for. So you see it has its NPK. It also has calcium and magnesium, and then it has micronutrients. So you want a balanced fertilizer. Again, you want your orchid to have a balanced diet. Now, again, once a month in the growing season, I just do this. I don't do anything else, and this gives them a boost of the main nutrient they need to grow. But again, if I just did this, it's going to start to just want this, and it's going to close itself off to absorbing those other nutrients. So if you're going to use a product like this, make sure that you're cautious about it. It's really great. You see great results, but be careful. You don't want to end up in the long run, ruining it. So anyways, I really hope that made sense. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free. If you have any suggestions, like like I said, I've only been doing this water culture for a year. Oh, well, it'll be a year in March. So if you have any pointers that you want to give me, I am totally open to that. You can certainly do that. Feel free. And again, if you have any questions, or if I didn't explain it in a way that was understandable, I apologize, and please let me know, and I'll try to answer as best as I can. But other than that, I really hope that everyone is having a great day, and happy growing to all, and I will talk to you next time.